Walter Bennett turned 80 on a Tuesday in October, alone in a house built for a family of 5.
He had taught history at Lincoln High School for 38 years and coached the boys' track team for 29 of them. His wife, Margaret, had passed 6 years earlier.
Since then, the house had grown quieter with every season. He had 3 children, Karen, Michael, and Denise, and 7 grandchildren scattered across 4 different states.
That morning, Walter set 2 plates on the table out of habit, then quietly put one away. He'd told himself he wouldn't expect anything.
80 was just a number, he said, but he still checked his phone twice before breakfast.
Karen had texted the night before. "Happy birthday tomorrow, Dad. So sorry we can't make it. The kids have soccer. Love you."
Michael sent a phone call that went to voicemail, followed by a text. "Sorry, Dad. Crazy week at work. We'll call this weekend."
Denise, the youngest, didn't text at all. She had meant to. She simply forgot, the way people forget things that feel permanent.
Walter told himself it was fine. He'd raised them to build their own lives. He just hadn't expected his own life to feel this empty once they had. He spent the morning in his garden, the same garden Margaret used to tend, pulling weeds that didn't need pulling just to have something to do with his hands.
At noon, he made himself a sandwich and ate it standing at the kitchen counter, looking out at the empty driveway.
He thought about calling one of the kids himself, then decided against it. He didn't want his birthday to feel like an obligation he'd forced on them.
By mid-afternoon, the mail arrived. 2 birthday cards, one from his sister in Ohio, one from a neighbor 2 doors down, nothing from his children. He sat in his recliner with the cards in his lap and the television playing quietly, and allowed himself exactly 5 minutes to feel the weight of it before standing back up.
That was when the doorbell rang. Walter wasn't expecting anyone. He opened the door to find a man in his late 40s standing on the porch, holding a small bakery box. The man's name was David Park. Walter didn't recognize him at first, not until David said the words that changed the shape of the entire day. "David, Mr. Bennett, you probably don't remember me. I was in your history class in 1994. You're the reason I became a doctor." Walter stood in the doorway, stunned. David explained that he'd been driving through town for a conference, and on impulse, looked up his old teacher's address.
"David, you stayed after school with me every day for 3 months my junior year, so I wouldn't fail out. Nobody else did that for me. I never forgot it."
Walter invited him in, mostly out of reflex, still processing that a stranger, a former student he barely remembered, had shown up on the one day his own children hadn't. They sat in the kitchen. David set the bakery box on the table. Inside was a small chocolate cake with Happy 80th, Coach Bennett written in icing.
"David, I saw on the town Facebook page it was your birthday this week. I couldn't just drive past."
Walter's hands trembled slightly as he cut the cake.
It was the first slice of birthday cake he'd had that day, and it came from a boy he'd taught 30 years ago. They talked for 2 hours.
David told him about medical school, about the operating room, about a career built on a foundation Walter had laid without ever knowing how far it would reach.
"David, you told me once that showing up mattered more than being perfect. I think about that every single day I put on my scrubs."
Walter listened, and for the first time all day, the house didn't feel quite so empty.
Before David left, he asked if he could take a photo with Walter for his own kids, so they'd know who their father talked about so often. He posted the photo that evening. "Drove 3 hours out of my way to see the man who changed my life.
Happy 80th birthday to the best teacher I ever had."
The post reached 600 shares by midnight. Former students Walter hadn't heard from in decades began commenting memories he didn't know he'd given people.
Karen saw the post first, scrolling through Facebook before bed. She sat up straight when she recognized her father's kitchen in the photograph.
She called Michael immediately. Neither of them said much at first.
They were both doing the math, realizing a stranger had shown their father more attention that day than either of his own children had. Denise saw the post the next morning and immediately called her father, her voice breaking before he even answered.
"Denise, Dad, I am so sorry. I saw the photo. I can't believe I forgot. I can't believe a former student remembered. Before, we did."
Walter told her it was all right. The way he always told his children things were all right, even when they weren't entirely. But the 3 siblings, independently and without discussing it with each other at first, each began to feel a version of the same discomfort. Karen called a family meeting not in person, but a group video call. The first the 3 of them had arranged together in over a year.
"Karen, we need to actually show up for him. Not send a card, not text, show up." Michael admitted he'd been telling himself their father was fine on his own, because it was easier than admitting he simply hadn't made the time. "Denise, he gave us everything growing up, and we couldn't give him one afternoon."
They agreed to do something they hadn't done in years, plan an actual gathering, not for a holiday, not out of obligation, but simply because their father deserved to know he mattered. 3 weeks later, Walter opened his front door expecting another quiet Saturday, and found his driveway full of cars.
Karen had flown in with her family. Michael had driven 6 hours. Denise had taken the day off work, something she rarely did. They'd invited David Park too, along with a handful of Walter's former students who'd commented on the post, wanting to properly meet the man they credited with changing their lives. The backyard filled with people, grandchildren running between the tables, former students trading stories about Coach Bennett's classroom, his children standing together for the first time in years.
Karen found her father sitting quietly on the porch steps, watching it all unfold, and sat down beside him.
Karen, I'm sorry it took a stranger showing up to remind us. Walter, you're here now. That's what matters to me.
She took his hand, and for a long moment, neither of them said anything else.
Later that evening, after most of the guests had left, Michael found his father in the garden, the same one Margaret used to tend.
Mikhail, we're going to do better, Dad. Not just today. Every month, one of us is coming to see you. No excuses.
Walter nodded, and for the first time since Margaret had passed, the garden didn't feel like something he tended alone.
David Park stayed until the end of the evening. Before he left, he shook Walter's hand one last time.
David, thank you for reminding me why I became a doctor, and for reminding your kids why you matter.
As the last car pulled out of the driveway, Walter stood on his porch and looked at his empty house, no longer quite so empty, not in the way that counted. He thought about the 2 plates he'd set that morning, out of habit, before quietly putting one away.
Next year, he told himself, he wouldn't have to put it away at all. Final text card.
It shouldn't take a stranger's kindness to remind us who deserves our time. Call them, visit them, show up while you still can.